the beginning, there was him.
Hey, Camelback family. Hey, we're so glad you're joining us today for service. My name is Danny. I'm one of the pastors here.
Hey everyone, I'm Domingo. I'm one of the pastors for Celebrate Recovery here.
Yeah, hey, we're glad that you're joining us here today. We want you to always feel welcome, to feel like you belong here at Camelback, because you definitely do. We have a big sign in the front of our building that says, "Welcome home," because we want everyone to feel welcome here and feel supported, and we hope you do. Today is an amazing day, Domingo.
Oh yeah, I'm really excited because you just said welcome home,
Yeah.
and then today we're going to be celebrating with some baptisms.
Oh man, I loved that we get to be a part of this celebration with people here on our campus here. So if you're new to baptisms, what that is that when we accept Christ, we want to live a life totally different, and we want to let people know that we live for Jesus, and we want to celebrate that. We're doing that today here on our campus. And what are some other things that are happening here in the next couple weeks with us, bud?
Yeah, we got our fifth Sunday coming up.
Yeah.
And then what I love is tying it back to what we do is serving our community, being the hands and feet of Jesus Christ. So for those of you that don't know, anytime that the month has 5 Sundays, on the 5th Sunday, what we do is close the doors down and be the hands and feet of Jesus Christ, having projects in campus and also within the community. Danny, what are we going to be working on?
Yeah, so I love how you're talking about that, because we don't have a traditional service on those Sundays. Instead, we come meet here on this campus. It's 8 o'clock, and we have things that we do for the community. And since school is just right around the corner here, we have a school on our campus. We love to support our school, so we're going to give back to our school. We're going to help them get things ready. So there's some projects that the schools are still working on and getting ready for the school year to start, and the teachers are coming back, so we want to help out with those projects. So we've been talking with a lot of the staff and the maintenance team for the school on what projects to do. So we're going to do some on that campus here. But the teachers also, we want them to feel loved. So we're going to be bringing things here for the teachers as they come back on the campus, some snacks that feel welcomed, and some cards. And we're going to be doing backpacks for the kids. So as the school opens up, the school's going to have a back to school thing for the kiddos, and we want to be on the campus here for that, to give them backpacks full of school supplies. So if you want to be a part of that, please, we'll be sending out stuff about that, about what supplies to be bringing in for the kiddos, because we want them to feel loved and everything.
Yeah, I know we're about to get our praise and worship, so you still have time to comment, share, and like, and let's get ready to have an amazing time with our service.
Yeah, but hey, we'll see you guys in there.
Give you glory for all you brought me through, and now I'm ready for whatever you want to do. I'm moving forward to follow after you, and now I'm ready for whatever you want to do. Oh yes, I'm ready for whatever you want to do. Your presence is an open door. We want you, Lord, like never before. Your presence is an open door. So come now, Lord, like never before.
Savior's robe as he walks into the room where people pray, where we hear praises, he hears faith. There is a sound I love to hear. It's the sound of the Savior's robe as he walks into the room where people pray, where we hear worship, he hears faith. Wake my soul and sing his praise aloud, sing his praise aloud. Oh, wake my soul and sing his praise aloud, sing his praise aloud. There is a sound that changes things, the sound of his people on their knees. Wake up, you slumbering, it's time to worship him. Wake my soul and sing his praise aloud, sing his praise aloud. Oh, wake my soul and sing his praise aloud, sing his praise aloud. And when he moves, and when we pray, we stood a wall, now stands the way, where every promise is amen. And when he moves, make no mistake, the bells of hell begin to shake. All hail the Lord, all hail the King. Hey, oh, let the King of Glory enter in. Hey, fall down on your knees and worship him. Hey, let his praise rise up, don't hold it in. Wake my soul and sing his praise aloud, sing his praise aloud. Oh, wake my soul and sing his praise aloud, sing his praise aloud.
Peace like a river, wash over me. Immerse me in water as deep as the sea. Hide me in love, your healing embrace. Peace like a river, wash over me. Come on, as I worship your majesty, I worship your holy name, Jesus, my everything, all that I am.
Lord, send revival.
Would you lift your voice in this moment?
Now, a move of your spirit, heaven break out. Come now in power, cover this land like you've done it before. Would you do it again? Lord, send revival. Lord, send it now. A move of your spirit, heaven break out. Come now in power, cover this land like you've done it before. Would you do it again? Lord, send revival. Lord, send it now. A move of your spirit, heaven break out. Come now in power, cover this land like you've done it before. Would you do it again? Heaven break out. Heaven break out. Oh, heaven break out. Heaven break out. We see Lord send. Lord send revival. Lord send it now. Move of your spirit. Heaven break out. Come now in power. Cover this land like you've done it before. Would you do it again? Lord send revival. Lord send it now. Move of your spirit. Heaven break out. Come now in power. Cover this land like you've done it before. Would you do it again?
Oh, good morning, church. How are you doing this morning? It is good to be in the house of the Lord. I tell you, and Mikey, welcome back. Our drummer has been touring Europe with his band for, well, how long? 3 weeks, a month, or 2 weeks? Wow, see, when we missed you, it seems like a long time. We are so glad to have him back. And I've been tracking with following him, and it's just been amazing to watch the tour that they've been taking. Want to mention real quickly, this is July. In July, we have 5 Sundays, so at the end of this month, there will be a Serve Sunday, and we are so looking forward to that. We've got some really cool things planned, things that we'll be doing for our school, things that we're going to be doing for our community, a commitment that we've actually made to Glendale. Do not miss this. This 5th Serve Sunday, so often for many of us, and for some of us it's okay from time to time to do that, but for some of us it's the Sunday that we have off and we get to just sleep in and do what, that's not what the intent was for this service. So if you've never done this, you want to get involved and you want to do it, you want to dive in and jump in with this. I know Danny gets up here and does dad jokes. And I've never really gotten into the dad joke. I had a guy try and sell me a coffin. That's the last thing I need. And so this Sunday, some of you are going to get that later on today. Some of you in the middle of Karen's message are going to laugh out loud, and we're going to know why you laughed out loud. This Sunday's water baptism. This is, those of us who are following Christ, Jesus said, come and follow me. And that meant we left our life behind. We recognized who he is. As our Savior, we embraced him as our Savior. And one of the things that we do to tell our friends and our family, and Jesus was an example of this, he intentionally had John the Baptist baptize him to set a pattern for you and I to follow. And we follow it with joy. And there are going to be some of you this morning that are going to get baptized outside. And it's just going to be a great time. Stick around for it. Hot dogs, all that stuff, water baptism. It's just going to be a wonderful kind of extended service for all of us to really enjoy. We set reminders on our phones for all kinds of things. Can I remind you this morning that we are the reason that Jesus gave his life? We are the reason that he suffered and he died. In a world that was lost, he gave all that he could give to show you and I the real reason to live. That's why we meet. That's why we're together as a family. That's why God is at work in our hearts and in our lives. And all that we do is to honor him. And in the area of finances in our lives, we do it there too. And together we give. And it's because you and I are faithful in our giving that everything happens on this campus and even beyond, even around the world, and even a part of what Shavian is doing around the world. That's all a part of what we are doing. And what we're looking at expanding who we are here to even another area. That all happens because we are faithful in our giving. And when we're faithful in our giving, he promises his blessings on our lives. And we live in that arena. That is who we are. That is what we do. As we just continue, let's honor God in giving. You know, the days are gone that we actually pass an offering plate around, because so many of us, like Karen and I, we give online. And so, but I don't want us to lose the moment. I don't want us to lose the reality that we are being obedient to God in our finances. We're saying, I'm all in. And that's why we give. And we watch how our dollars make a difference in not just people's lives here, but throughout eternity. We will never know the full results of what we do until we get there. Lord, bless this time. Bless this time as we worship you, not just in song, which is so critical, so important, and with all of our hearts, but we even do it in the area of giving. In your name we pray. And everyone said, amen.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live
Well, this is church. It's not a performance. Thank you, Aman. And I got to tell you, I'm a little wrecked this morning in the best way. That worship got me. Well, good morning. So we've been having such an amazing time this summer, just going through the books, into the Old Testament and looking at some of our Old Testament heroes. One of the things I love about the Bible is that God chose to teach us about his heart, about how to follow him, about how to love him through the stories of imperfect people like you and me. He did it from the very beginning, and he still continues to do it today. He teaches us about him through the stories and the testimonies, the prophecy of imperfect people. And today I have the privilege of being able to represent one of the girl heroes of the Old Testament. We're going to be talking about Esther this morning. And Esther was a powerhouse for the Lord. Her story, in the 10 chapters of her story, encapsulate a very short period of time in her life when she was just a teenager. And what stands out to me most about Esther is that she was somewhere between 12 and 17 years old. Yet her drive and her passion for the calling that God put in her life was something that I've never seen in a teenage girl before, including myself. She was not distracted by the drama of the life and the world that was going on around her. She knew what God called her to do, and she moved forward in that calling without distraction. That was not my story growing up, for sure. So I learned a lot from Esther. My story growing up was probably the opposite of that. Where Esther was not distracted by the drama, I was very distracted by the drama and the dating and all the stuff. And even though I had goals that I had set for my life, I kept finding myself getting tossed in the waves of the distractions and took me off course from the goals that I had. James talks about this in chapter 1 when he says in verse 5, "If you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and he will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking. But when you ask him, be sure that your faith is in God alone. Do not waver, for a person with a divided loyalty is unsettled as a wave of the sea that is blown and tossed in the wind." That was definitely me for a good portion of my life. You see, by the time I was in my early 20s, I had gone through a season of about 2 years where I just experienced a situation that was extremely painful, just devastating, and really changed the course of my life even up until today. And when I came out of that season, I recognized that I had an opportunity to rewrite my story. And even though I had the opportunity to rewrite my story and the desire to do that, how I went about it wasn't always the best way. And I found myself relocating from Maryland, I almost said Arizona, from Maryland to South Florida. And I went for the wrong reason, but God redeemed it. Because soon after I got there, I realized that I wanted to start over, start afresh, and go back to college and finish my degree. Because in my family, the expectation was that you graduate from college, you start a career, you have a successful life. And so that was my desire. I was a little bit behind the ball, and so I said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and enroll in college, and I'm going to graduate in 3 years instead of 4 because I wanted to fast track my career. And I went into fashion merchandising was my major because that's what I had done in my early teens and 20s, and I got into retail management, and I felt like I would be good at that, and it was familiar to me, but I realized quickly that that wasn't the path that I really wanted to take for my life. And so I was introduced to another degree program that I felt really tracked more with my gifts and my talents and my ability to earn a good income. And so I changed my major, but I was still able to graduate in 3 years and climb that career ladder. I had a goal of starting my own business. Kind of got there, and not the way I thought I was going to get there, but still got there. But here's the thing. Even though I was very driven in that point with school and graduating and doing all those things, the other part of my life that surrounded my social life did not align at all with the goals that I had set for college and career. And I found myself doing things and living a life that was really kind of a double standard. I said that I wanted to do these things. I said I wanted to be a professional. I wanted to get my life back together, but I found myself socially with people that were taking me down a completely different pathway. And I thought because they were wealthy, because they appeared to have it all together, that I was on the right path, but I wasn't. And I had family members who lived near me, and they were smart enough and attuned enough to what I was going through to actually come around side me. And they said, they challenged me on it. They said, you say you want these things, but you're doing these things. You're living a double life. And what my sisters and their husband did is they showed up for me. And they spoke truth to me even when I didn't want to hear it and it was hard for me to hear. And they challenged me in the life that I was living and ultimately invited me into a relationship with Jesus Christ. Invited me into a relationship with Christ that would take me from a life of pain to a life of purpose. And I would love to tell you that I had a 180 experience with God, that I got saved, I turned away from my sins, and I moved in one direction, and here I am today. But unfortunately, or fortunately, because God redeems it all, that wasn't my story. As one of my sisters said, you really didn't do a 180, Karen. You kind of did a series of 360s, where I saw a glimpse of Jesus and I started going down, but then I got distracted by what was over here because those things were so enticing and familiar to me, and so I kept going back over into what we call the world. And then I would spin around again and I'd see another glimpse of Jesus, and I did this several times over a 2-year period till I finally got dizzy enough from spinning that I said, wait a minute, I've got to make a choice here. Either I'm in or I'm out. And thankfully, I decided I'm going to be all in for Jesus. But that wasn't Esther's story. She knew what God called her to do. She knew that she was called for a purpose that was greater than what she could imagine. But, I am forever thankful for the people that showed up in my life, the people that told me the truth, and the people that invited me into my relationship with Jesus. And here's the thing, when we show up for people in the good times and the bad times with kindness, it marks them. They marked my life, and kindness marks you. So Esther's story starts about 470 BC in Persia. King Xerxes was the king. He was a prideful and impulsive an arrogant king. So arrogant that he decided to throw a 180-day party just so he could show everybody around him just how awesome he was. 6 months of drinking and eating and partying. And at the end of that 100-day period, he decided that he wanted to impress people even more, and so he had a beautiful, beautiful wife named Queen Vashti, and he said, okay, I want you, Queen, he summoned her to come and parade in front of everybody. And she wouldn't have been fully dressed, by the way, at all. So she's like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. And so the king was angered and he was humiliated. I mean, she embarrassed him in front of all of his friends. He summoned her, and the custom would be that she would come and do whatever the king said, but she said, no, I'm not doing that. And so he gathered together his staff of his closest yes men, and he said, what are we going to do about the queen? We have to do something. She has to understand that she can't just say no to me. And as his yes men were listening to him tell the story, they were concerned about what she did, but even more so, they were concerned about their own wives and how that would look in their own lives. And so they said, no, we have to do something about this. So what they ended up doing was they ended up legislating their wives' obedience. they made a rule that said the husbands or the leaders, the wives must submit and do whatever they say. And Queen Vashti was ultimately banished. She was banished from the throne. So Esther, as I mentioned earlier, she was a young girl, anywhere from 12 to 17. She was a young Jewish girl. And so the Jews that were living in Persia in this time, they had been displaced from Judah about 100 years prior, but they were a minority in the region of Persia. And so she was an orphan. Her parents had died, and her cousin Mordecai, who was, I'm assuming, older, he adopted her and took her into his care, and he was her caregiver. And he loved her, and he was concerned for her. So a few years later, after the queen had been banished, the king decided it was time for a new king. So he set out to do a mandatory beauty pageant for a new queen. And the way this worked was, there are 127 provinces in Persia, and he went out and he trafficked and gathered all the girls the most attractive girls from all 127 provinces and brought them in to his harem. Esther was one of those girls, and Mordecai, her cousin, followed along and said to her, "Do not tell them your nationality. Do not tell them that you are a Jew." They were minorities, and they were looked down upon among the Persians, and he was concerned for her. And Esther was obedient, and she did as Mordecai said. So when Esther came into the harem, there was a guy named Haggai, or I think that's how I pronounce his name. Anyway, he favored Esther. She was poised, she was beautiful, she was obedient, and he favored her, and she got special treatment. She got a special meal, she got special beauty treatments, she even had 7 maidservants assigned to her. This process of these girls in this harem was about 12 months of cleaning them up. Cleaning them up, getting them perfumes and dressings and showers, and a 12-month shower, basically, is what they were doing. So Esther had special treatments in that as well. And then after the 12 months was over, the king would call each girl individually, would come to him, and they would spend the night with him. And you can imagine what happened to these poor girls. And then the next morning, they were sent away to the king's second harem, which included his wives. So about 4 years later, it was Esther's turn. And Mordecai told her again, "Do not tell them your nationality." And she showed poise and wisdom in that moment. And at about 1,200 girls later, Esther wasn't sent to the second harem. She was made queen. The king loved her more than he loved the others. He favored her, and he made her queen. Now, the interesting thing about the book of Esther is there is no mention of God in the entire book of Esther. No mention of God's name. But we know that he was there. And I would encourage you to read the entire book of Esther, and you will see that he is hands-on throughout the whole entire book in the midst of his apparent absence from the book. So soon after Esther becomes queen, Mordecai saves the king. And I want to read it in Esther chapter 2, verse 21. One day Mordecai was on duty in the king's gate. 2 of the king's eunuchs, Bigthana and Teresh, they sound like wrestlers, don't they? They were guards maybe they were wrestlers. They were guards at the door of the king's private quarters, and they became angry at King Xerxes and plotted to assassinate him. But Mordecai heard about the plot, and he gave the information to Queen Esther. She then told the king about it and gave Mordecai the credit for the report. So the conspirators got hanged, and poor Mordecai got forgotten. It was customary to honor somebody who had done what Mordecai had done by telling them about the assassination plot. But he got forgotten. But this divine oversight really set stage for what was to come next. So the king at that point appointed his number 2 man. He was a man named Haman. And Haman was a descendant of King Agag. And King Agag was number 1 enemy of the Jews. And so the king, Haman, if you thought the king had a big ego, Haman's ego was astronomical. And he actually required that all the royal officials would bow down to him when he would pass by them or they would pass by him. But he noticed at one point that Mordecai refused to bow down to him. And this enraged him. Mordecai is saying, look, I serve the king. I don't serve you. I'll bow to him, but I'm not bowing to you. And Haman, he's relative of King Agag, number one enemy of the Jews. The Jews are a minimal people in Persia. They're looked down upon. He hates the Jews. And this racism is not only wicked and arrogant, it's irrational. Because Mordecai decides that he doesn't want to just Haman decides that he doesn't want to just kill Mordecai for disrespecting him. He wants to kill all of the Jewish people. All of them, throughout all 127 provinces, because Mordecai won't bow to him. He went to the king and he called the Jews troublemakers and outsiders and said, we must do something about them. We have to write an edict. An edict was a law. It was an irreversible law. So the king wrote an edict that said that all the Jewish people would be killed on a certain date. Mordecai heard about this shortly after, and he was devastated. He just went into mourning. He put on sackcloth and ashes, and he sent a message to Esther, and he says, you have to go tell the king. Just like last time, you have to go tell the king that Haman has done this. Because Mordecai believes that God is ultimately going to deliver the Jewish people. And here's what Esther said. Then Esther told Hathach to go back and reply to this message to Mordecai. All the king's officials and even the people in the provinces know that anyone who appears before the king in his inner court without being invited is doomed to die, unless the king holds out his gold scepter. And the king has not called for me to come to him for 30 days. So Hathach gave Esther's message to Mordecai. Mordecai sent this reply to Esther. Don't think for a moment that because you're in the palace, you will escape when all the other Jews are killed. If you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from another place. This is Mordecai professing his belief that he believes that God is going to deliver his people. He said, but you and your relatives will die. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for such a time as this. So Esther takes Mordecai's response. She says, okay, I'll do it. But here's the deal. We're going to fast for 3 days first. All of us are going to fast. And then I'll go to the king, because if I go, I might die. If I don't go, I might die. So really, what do I have to lose? So Esther goes to the king. And I have to believe that during that time that Esther was fasting for 3 days, she was seeking God's face. Give me a plan. Give me a plan. I don't know what to do. I am 13 years old, and I have a big assignment ahead of me. And I believe that God was in the shadows there working in that situation. So she goes to the king, and the king sees her, and he is pleased by her. He puts out his scepter, and he invites her in so she doesn't die. And the king says, what do you want? Anything you want. Half of my kingdom, it is yours. And she said, would you and Haman come to a banquet with me tomorrow? And he's like, you want to throw a party just for me and my buddy? Oh, their egos were flying. He's like, I love a party, 180 days. Give it all to me. Give me the food. Give me the wine. So the next day, they went into the banquet, Haman and the king. Egos flying. They know all of her attention is on them. And she knew it. The king says, what do you want, Esther? Half of my kingdom, it's all yours. Whatever you want. She said, come back tomorrow. What? Come back tomorrow for another banquet. He's like, 2 days? We're on our way to 180 days again. All right. Okay, we'll be there. We'll be there. Well, that night, Haman went back home, and he was bragging to all of his buddies and his family, his wife, about all the power he had. He was the number 2 guy, and how only he was invited to go to this banquet with the king and the queen. And he's like, but this guy Mordecai, I can't stand him. He's ruining everything. He won't bow down to me. I don't know what to do about him. And his wife said, well, we've got some extra lumber in the backyard. Why don't you just go ahead and build a gallows for him and just ask the king to assassinate him? Now, gallows back then isn't what we think of it now. It was really like a long pole with a sharp tip at the end, and they would impale people on it. So Haman said, all right, let's do that. So they did that night. The king, on the other hand, he couldn't sleep. And so he called one of his staff to come in and bring the record book to him and to start reading it to him. I guess he thought maybe that would make him sleepy and fall asleep. But I see God working in the shadows here as well. And so the guy is reading, and he gets to the record of Mordecai when he told Esther about the 2 guards that were plotting to kill him. And he said, hey, what did we do? How did we honor Mordecai? And he's like, yeah, we didn't honor him. And he's like, oh, we need to do that. So the next morning, the king sees Haman. Haman's on his way to the king to ask him permission to impale Mordecai. And the king says to Haman, hey, what would you do if we were going to honor somebody that really deserved great honor? What would we do? And Haman, in his big fat ego, was thinking that the king was talking about him. So he's like, oh, I got a plan. And he had devised this plan with robes and crowns and horses and parades. And the king's like, perfect. Do that for Mordecai. He's like, what? Do it for who? He says, do it for Mordecai. Okay, you're the king. So he's walking away, and he's like, this guy, I can't stand him. He's ruining everything. He took my parade. So he gathers Mordecai, and he puts a robe on him and a crown on his head and puts him on a horse and parades him through town, and you've got to know what's going on in him. He's probably so red-faced. After the parade, Mordecai goes back to work. Haman and the king go to their second banquet. In this point, Esther, we know a couple things. One, we know that Esther is strongly leaning into her strengths because she is a little girl with these 2 big men, right? So she is leaning into her strengths of wisdom and beauty and poise and discretion. We also know that Mordecai and Esther are working together and collaborating to save their people. They showed up for their people in this. And here's the thing, when we show up and we care for people in our neighborhoods, in our workplaces, students, when you care for kids, students, your friends at school and on your teams, your teammates, what you're really doing is you are shining bright for Jesus. And when we love each other and we care for each other as believers in the church, instead of fighting against each other and getting on social media and becoming keyboard warriors and calling out people because some of their non-essential beliefs aren't the same as mine, and I'm going to call out this pastor and that pastor, and I'm going to talk bad about this church and that church. We are doing the opposite of what God calls us to do. But when we love and we care for each other as believers, we are living out what Jesus said in John 13:35, when he said, by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples by how you love. Love isn't arrogant. Love isn't proud. Love isn't boastful. Love is selfless. Love always puts the other person first. And when we do that, people see that there's something different inside of us simply by being kind. And here's the thing about kindness. It is increasingly uncommon in our world. And because of that, when we show kindness to other people, it goes a long way. When you show up for people with kindness, it marks them. And it makes them curious and ask, why are you so different? What's different about you? I think about Mike and Zandra. They showed up years ago for a single young dad who was going through an extremely painful time in his life. And he was struggling. And they wrapped their arms around this young dad, and they walked through life with him. They prayed for him. They prayed with him. They invited him into their home. They cooked for him. They challenged him. They spoke truth to him. They discipled this dad. And today, they showed him kindness, and his life is forever marked. And today, this dad He's in church. He has an amazing relationship with his child. He is serving. He is growing in his faith. He's in a life group. And he is a man after God's own heart. When you show up for people and you are kind to them, you mark their lives and you mark your own. Let's go back to Esther. So banquet number 2, she had a clever plan for banquet number 2. The king again, what would you like, Esther? Half my kingdom is yours. She said, if it pleases you, spare my people. They are going to be sold to be destroyed and killed. Esther just revealed her nationality because the king knew what was happening. The king said, who did this? Who's doing this? And she pointed to Haman and she said, that man right there, our enemy, he did it. And he realized, if this goes through, that means that my wife is going to be killed. And he lost it. He was so enraged and he was so emotional that he ran out of the room, the king did. And Haman knew he was a dead man walking at that point. So he was a little overserved, second day of the banquet, and he was just begging Esther, please, begging him, please appeal, please go to the king, please save me. And when he was doing this, he stumbled and he fell on Esther as she was lounging on a couch. And at that point, of course, the king walks in, and the king is thinking, you are hurting my wife, you are trying to attack my wife. That's it. I'm done. You're dead. You are a dead man walking. He calls the guards in. He says, take them. Take him. So the guards are walking him out, and they're like, hey, when we were on our way into work today at the palace, we saw a big gallows in Haman's backyard. Should we just impale him on that? And the king's like, you know what? That's a really good idea. Go ahead. Take him. So there's a lot more to this story. The king had signed that edict saying that the Jews were going to be killed, and the edict was not reversible. And so the king worked with Mordecai and Esther, and they were working together to save their nation, and they wrote a new edict that said that the Jewish people could actually defend themselves during this attack. They didn't have permission before. And so sometime later, the attack did happen, and the Jewish people actually defeated all of the Persians who came to kill them. And God delivered his people. And here's the thing, because Esther said yes to the story of her calling, and because of her incredible courage and wisdom and just craftiness, her nation was saved. You and I, we all have a unique calling in our lives, or a unique story of calling in our lives, I should say. A calling isn't just for people in ministry. Maybe you're a business person or a teacher, you're in healthcare. Everybody has a unique story of calling on our lives, but the call for all of us is the same. The call is to love people and to shine bright for Jesus. And one way that we get to do that as a church is in Fifth Serve Sunday. The pastor was talking about it earlier. The Fifth Serve Sunday is whenever there's 5 Sundays in a month, we come, instead of gathering in this room together for church, we gather together to be the church to the community. We serve our community, and we have lots of different projects. But every single time, 5 times a year, when we show up to clean up or to paint or to refresh or to make signs or to do whatever we're going to do that month, we are telling our community, we love you, we see you, and you are worth investing in. And so I would encourage you, if you have not been a part of Fifth Serve Sunday, make it a priority to be here. Not next Sunday, but the following Sunday. It's a little bit longer of a morning, but we'll feed you, and you will get fed by loving and serving other people because we're not just called to sit here in seats and be consumers. We're called to put feet behind our faith and be Christ to our community. And this is such a great way to do that. No matter where you are, you can show up for people. And if you don't know how to do it or what to do, your next step is just to do something. School is going to be starting in a few weeks, and every school, whether they have busing or not, has a parent pickup line. And we know, especially in the beginning of the year, that parent pickup line is crazy. But guess what? The people that are out there lovingly gathering your children and putting them in your car, they're hot. It's 115 degrees, and they're standing out there for 30 minutes at least. So maybe instead of getting aggravated and irritated and impatient, we can just show a little extra patience, wave to them, thank them, maybe have a water bottle ready for them. Or maybe you can show up by returning your shopping cart to the place you were supposed to return them to in the parking lot, so that poor guy or gal that has to gather all those carts doesn't have to run all over the place. Or maybe you can show up at your favorite restaurant by developing a little bit of a relationship with your server in the few minutes you have with them. I have 2 friends. Every single time I go out to eat with them, I've never gone out to eat with these 2 friends where they haven't, 1, asked for the server's name, and 2, started a little bit of a relationship with them by just small talk and made that person feel valued and seen. Simple, simple things that we can do. We're getting ready to end our service, and we're going to go out and celebrate baptism. We're going to celebrate that next step in people's lives. If you have made that decision to follow Christ in your life, but you have not taken that next step of baptism, today is your day. We are ready for you. We have everything that you need. We have people outside that would love to serve you and help you through that. But maybe you're here today and you've never even made that relationship, that decision for a relationship with Christ. Maybe you're just kind of kicking the tires of your faith. You've come to church a few times. Maybe you've gone to a small group. You've had conversations with friends. And something today, either in the worship service or in the message, something today just kind of pierced your heart and said, I'm ready. I'm ready to make that decision. Would you all stand with me for a minute? Let's all close our eyes and bow our heads just to give a little bit of personal space to the moment. If that's you and you're ready to make that decision to follow Christ, if you're ready to make that decision to ask Jesus into your heart to be your Lord and Savior, if that's you, nobody's looking except me. Would you do me the honor and just raise your hand real quick? Just put your hand up and down, just so I know, so I can see you. Yes. Yes. You're saying, I've been walking down a path that is not leading to a destination that I intended or a destination that's good for me, and I want to change course. I want to live for Jesus. If you did raise your hand, would you pray this prayer? Let's all actually pray this prayer, because the recognition and belief is really all it takes to be saved. Lord Jesus, I recognize that I'm a sinner and that you paid the ultimate price so I don't have to. I ask you into my heart, and from this day forward, I will live for you the best I can. In your name, amen. Amen. If you did raise your hand, you made that decision to follow Christ today, would you, at the end of our service after our song, would you make your way to your right, my left, to a table over there? Pastor James and I would love just to have a minute with you, and we have something for you. But let's go ahead and end our service in song.
For all you brought me through. Yes, I'm ready for whatever you wanna do. Your presence is an open door. So come. Your presence is an open door. So come now, Lord, like never before. Whoa. Come on. And I know breakthrough is coming. By faith, I see a miracle. My God made me a promise and it won't stop now. I know breakthrough is coming. By faith, I see a miracle. My God made me a promise and it won't stop now. And I know breakthrough is coming. By faith, I see a
Hey, church,
miracle.
service today was amazing. We hope you really enjoyed it. We talked about Esther, and Esther is such an amazing story. What was some amazing things that you took from today?
I mean, when Pastor Karen were just talking about just showing up, I mean, that was probably my biggest takeaway. When she was talking about how people just showed up for her, I started thinking about how people just showed up for me and why I'm so tied into this vision and to the community, because how I felt when people showed up for me here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and one of the things for our vision was getting to our connecting with our kids before, like running a race. The first one that gets there will win, and
Yeah.
that's what we're doing here on our campus. And so, like, we're going to our school during our Fifth Serve Sunday, and we want to be able to facilitate and help our school up because it's our community. That's who we want to be helping is showing our community that they are loved and they are needed.
Agreed. I mean, I have 2 kids that have graduated from Camelback Academy, which is a K-8 charter school. I got 2 younger kids are in here right now, and then my wife actually works here. So I love this church and I love this school.
Yeah, so do I. But hey, guys, it was a wonderful Sunday. We're about to head over into baptisms, so we will definitely see you guys next week. Let us know if you need anything by sending us a message, any prayer requests. We'd love to be able to pray for you, but we hope you guys have a blessed Sunday.
Have a blessed day.